Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us in the 10-minute Bible lesson. Well, we've got another parable today, and the parable is called the Parable of the Good Shepherd. And that parable is found in the Gospel of John, chapter 10. So let's go ahead and start reading. We're going to begin reading in John chapter 10, verses 7 and 8. So Jesus said this. He says, "Then Jesus said to them again, 'Most assuredly, I say to you, I am the door of the sheep.'" Could we just pause there just a minute? So I want you to notice the emphasis that Jesus makes here. So it must be, well, everything Jesus said was important, but sometimes when he wanted to make an extra emphasis, he would say, "most assuredly." In other words, you can definitely count on this as something that's true. "Most assuredly, I say to you, I am the door of the sheep. All who ever came before me are thieves and robbers, but the sheep did not hear them. Now we are the sheep." That is to say, that it's an analogy that Jesus uses for those who belong to him. That is to say, those that are his sheep. He's the shepherd. Those that are his sheep, those that have been saved, those that have asked Jesus to be their Savior, they belong to him. They are the sheep. Now, Jesus told another parable in Matthew 25, and this parable was about the judgment at the last day. And he said this, he said, "I will gather all nations before me and separate them as a shepherd does his sheep. As a shepherd divides the sheep from the goats." In fact, I believe in that parable, Jesus said that the sheep will be on the right hand and the goats will be on the left. Now, I don't know about you, but I want to be on the right hand. I want to be one of Jesus's sheep. And I think about that, about the analogy of us being a sheep is not real flattering. And why do I say that? Because sheep, I understand, are not real smart. And so maybe that's a really good analogy. And not only are they not very smart, they're defenseless creatures. They can hardly defend themselves. And I think that makes it probably a very apt analogy for us. Now, Jesus said this. He said, "I am not only the door, but I am the shepherd." So there's two things that Jesus said about himself. And then he says all of the others that claim that, they're not truthful. He says, in fact, they're false, and he calls them robbers and thieves. So let's go on and look at the next two verses. That's verses 9 and 10. So Jesus goes on and says this, "I am the door. If anyone enters by me, he will be saved, and will go in and out and find pasture. The thief does not come except to steal and to kill and to destroy. I have come that they may have life and that they may have it more abundantly." So once again, Jesus states this, that he is the door. In fact, he says, now I want you to catch this, if you will. He says, "I am the door." In fact, that's one of the 7 different times in the Gospel of John that Jesus says, "I am." And I think that's noteworthy. So he says that he is the door. And he goes on to say, if we enter through the door, we will be saved. And I think that's another way of saying that the only way to be saved is to go through Jesus. Does that make sense? I think that it probably does. Now, I think Jesus wants us to make sure in this parable that there's others that claim to be that, but they're not at all. In fact, they are thieves. In fact, Jesus says their reason and their motivation is not the same as his reason and his motivation. He says they've come for a different reason, and their reason was to steal or to kill or to destroy. But his motive was completely different. He came to save us, right? And not only save us, but to be able to give us life and life more abundantly. Well, let's go on and read a couple of more verses in John chapter 10, verses 11 and 12. He goes on to say, I am the good shepherd. The good shepherd gives his life for the sheep. But a hireling, he who is not the shepherd, one who does not own the sheep, sees the wolf coming and leaves the sheep and flees. And the wolf catches the sheep and scatters them. So here Jesus uses another I am statement. What does he say? He says, I am. That's two of them. And there's 7 in the Gospel of John. I am the door, he said. But here he says, I am the good shepherd. And I think that's it kind of reminds me of when Moses met the Lord in the backside of the desert in the flaming burning bush. Remember that? And when he spoke to the Lord said, I am that I am. I don't know if you're familiar with that. That's over in the book of Exodus. So I'm just going to say that Jesus himself, he is the great I am. So he's the good shepherd. And the good shepherd is not a hireling. That is, the good shepherd gives his life for the sheep. Well, let's look at the last 2 verses. That's in John chapter 10, verses 13 and 14. So Jesus goes on to say, and he describes the hireling. He says, the hireling flees because he is a hireling and does not care for the sheep. I am the good shepherd, and I know my sheep and am known by my own. So Jesus goes on to say this, that the sheep know him and that he knows the sheep. And I think that's comforting to know that. In fact, I've heard this, and I actually believe it to be true, that sheep, they can know their shepherd by the sound of their voice. They can identify their own shepherd by the sound of their voice. They hear the shepherd, they recognize the shepherd, and they will follow the shepherd. Jesus said, I know my own, and my own know me. And I think it's a pretty good thought to think that Jesus knows us. I mean, we live in a world when people, they don't know, there's a lot they don't know about themselves. They don't know where they come from. They don't know where they're going. They don't know who they are. To me, that's an excellent description of someone that's lost. And Jesus came to save and to find the lost sheep. Aren't you glad? I'm glad that he sought us out and found us and brought us into his fold. Well, listen, that's all we have for today. We appreciate you joining us and tuning in, and we hope that you'll join us the next time.